Hey guys, it has been a while, and I thought that it wasn't going to be this long, but I ended up moving. New studio is very different, but that's for a different video, and I am going to be making content pretty regularly. Got some big plans. A lot of the videos that we talked about, or that I talked about last year, are definitely coming. Along with a whole bunch of other videos because, well, life has changed and there are a lot of new things to talk about. But I thought I'd jump right into the topic that is on everybody's mind. Everybody, if you're a synth nerd, that is. Sorry, if you're into synthesizers, if you find it offensive to be called a synth nerd, is the Moog One. I didn't really want to do a video last week when the announcement was leaked because I thought it'd be basically irresponsible to talk about a synthesizer based on some of the most irrelevant information that you can possibly get about a synthesizer. And yeah, I'm going to say that the price of the synthesizer is actually not really something that should matter that much. Now, I know that sounds absolutely insane, but I will tell you in just this one analogy why I think that most people actually could agree that the cost of the synthesizer is not really the determining factor on what the synthesizer is actually worth. If you were turned loose in a warehouse full of every synth that's ever been made, and the person who owned the warehouse said, hey, you can have one synthesizer free of charge, just go ahead and grab it. If you're not one of these people that buys synthesizers and sits on them and tries to buy up all the vintage synths that you can find in your local market or on eBay to simply bring down the supply and bring up the demand so you can turn around and sell it for a profit, one of those people, then the price isn't the thing that is going to determine which synthesizer you pick up in that situation. You might be... and sure, you could make the argument that, say, the most expensive synthesizers in the world are probably like the EMS 200, the EMS 100, or an ARP 2500, that a lot of people would choose that synthesizer. Sure, but the truth is a lot of people would, say, even pick this guy right here. This is going to be, some people out there, that's going to be their favorite synth in the world, regardless of the fact that it's not really an expensive synthesizer, and thanks to Behringer, it's going to get even cheaper. I'm sorry, less expensive. People are going to pick the synthesizer that sounds best to their ears, and they're going to also, probably the second most important thing is, what's the workflow like? What kind of relationship can you develop with the synth? How quick can you design with it? Or what is, do you want to just do bass lines and come up with cool little melodies, or do you want to go full on bizarre and make textures? There's East Coast, West Coast synthesizer technology, and some people swear by one or the other. At the end of the day, the price isn't really what's important about the synthesizer. Now, it may create a barrier to entry. It may make it a synthesizer that you cannot afford at the time, but it's not really what matters when you're talking about the actual synthesizer. So with all that being said, I didn't really want to talk about a synth that's $6,000 to $8,000 without hearing it. Now that I have heard it, as Moog has released a series of teardown videos where they kind of randomly go through different parts of the synthesizer. Sweetwater's released a pretty long video. They also released a smaller video. Pro Audio King just put out a video. So I have now actually heard the synthesizer, and I've seen the synthesizer in action, and I've seen the workflow. Now, a couple things that instantly stood out to me for the things that I look for in a synthesizer that seem to be missing, and again, you can say this is nitpicky. The internet loves to be nitpicky.
I take it from that little impressed noise that you are interested in purchasing that matter transporter, sir.
$2, and it only transports matter. Well, I'll give you 35 cents.
Sold. But I must warn you, this device carries a frighteningly high risk of catastrophic...
I said I'll take it.
But I think you can actually be nitpicky with a synthesizer that is $6,000 to $8,000 as opposed to something that's in the sub $1,000 market. If it's sub $1,000 and Behringer was even proved that wrong, and I hate to be sounding like a Behringer fanboy, but they have truly won me over. So the DeepMind kind of goes way above and beyond what a synthesizer in that market should be able to do for modulation. But for the most part, if you're talking about a sub $1,000 synthesizer, yeah, you can ask and ask and ask and keep asking for features that probably are not going to make it into a synthesizer that's sub $1,000. But going all the way up to a $6,000 to $8,000 synth, it is perfectly valid, I think, to mention some things that you go, if I'm paying $6,000 to $8,000 for the synthesizer, it probably should basically do just about anything. And the things that I'm going to bring up, somebody might say, well, that would just make the synthesizer more expensive. Sorry, $6,000 to $8,000. That's about as expensive as it gets. Sure, you can talk about the Schmidt, you can talk about a couple other synthesizers, but those are one-off bespoke one-off bespoke synthesizers that are basically hand-built, they don't have a giant company behind them. All that aside, backtracking, one thing that I noticed right off the bat, as a fan of Moog synthesizers, which I have currently a sub 37 over there, you can see, I had a little fatty, I currently have a Model D, it's a Behringer. I spent significant time with a Moog Voyager and a Moog Voyager XL. One thing that I have noticed that I find missing that is perplexing to me is that with the sub 37 they introduced the overdrive knob. Now, I'm not going to get into the science of what the overdrive knob does because there are people that can talk circles around me when it comes to synthesis, but ultimately what the overdrive knob does is it feeds itself back into itself, so you don't have to do the old headphone out trick to run it back in, which what that to my ears does is gives you, depending on where your filter is set, it's going to give you a buzzier, warmer, fuller, pseudo-distorted sound. And then when you really push the overdrive and you start pushing the resonance in the filter, you get into some very noisy territory. Now, I don't have a problem with the Moog sound before that. I love the Moog sound. I love the ladder filter. I love the Moog ladder filter. I have several ladder filters in in my modular rig. I could go on and on about how much I love the ladder filter. Everybody does. But what that did for me, for the Moog sound, is said, hey, you can have the traditional Moog sound, this warm, fat, organic, to my ears, what I always say is it has a weird real feel to it. That's just my terminology. But for the noisy, clangy, distorted, aggressive sound, I always thought of things like the ARP, the MS-20. Those are two classics to me that have always had almost like a, for a lack of better expression, like a rock and roll or industrial attitude. And like the Moog, to me, sound is a different sound, and it can get there. And sure, you can run any synth through a guitar effects pedal. You can run it into any amazing amount of AU or VST like plugins you've got in your computer, and sure, you can get there. But I mean, to me, to have each synth has its own unique character, and each synth has a place that it sits in. So I don't think about like post-production. Post-production is a different thing. I think of when I go to each individual synth that I have in this room to fire it up when I'm working on something or I'm just messing around, every one of them has a certain character. So it's bizarre to me that Moog would take a step backwards and remove the overdrive function in their flagship synth. Now, that being said, I've only seen the videos that are out. I've only seen about a couple hours of people talking about it and demonstrating it. Might have missed something, or they may have not covered it yet. But it's bizarre that it does not have a dedicated overdrive knob. If I have to go into the menu routing functions, that's just losing something for me. For me, like, it's not really just about sound with analog synths. To me, I gravitate towards synths that are knob per function or close to knob per function. I did a lot of like stuff in the 90s and in the throughout the 90s where it was menu diving. I used a lot of Ensoniq stuff. I used a lot of just digital synths, and like I'm over that. I spent 10 or 12 years mostly menu diving. I don't like it. A lot of people still love it. A lot of people are great at it, and I'm not taking anything away from that. It's just a different workflow and a different experience. So for me, again, if I'm paying $6,000 to $8,000, should be pretty much knob per function. Another thing that, and again, I'm not taking away from the modulation capability and the way they chose to handle modulation. I think it makes sense. I have a Matrix Brute. I love it. I love the Matrix grid. I also have a lot of modular stuff. So I also like just jacking straight in. But I understand in the context of a synth, it's ridiculous to try and have a mess of patch cables. So that's the first thing that I noticed, no overdrive. The other thing that is perplexing to me, again, for that $6,000 to $8,000, if this was a much more, I don't want to say reasonably priced, because I don't think that's, I don't have a problem with high price tags, as long as they're justified. So I'm not going to get into that. But what I will say is for $6,000 to $8,000, I really don't feel like if you're touting your synthesizer as multi-timbral, which is probably very new to folks that are not from the digital synth age and have only been playing synths maybe for the last 5-10 years and have stayed away from digital stuff, multi-timbral is probably a brand new thing to you. It's a brand new, like, it seems like a brand new concept because nobody's really, I take that back. Maybe does some of the DSI stuff do it? Tell me in the comments, because I think maybe I've kind of stayed away from most of the modern DSI stuff. I love the OB6. I love the Prophet 6. I think they're great. I thought the Poly Evolver was interesting, great, and different when it came out. So, anyways, multi-timbral is different, at least to most folks. And if you have something that's $6,000 to $8,000, sorry, give it another octave of keys. Give it 2 more octaves of keys and extend the panel. Because for $6,000 to $8,000, you can extend that panel and give me a mixer section for the different like synth voices that you're using, this different synth patches that you're using. I think it's, again, really strange. And again, take this with a grain of salt. This is only because it's a $6,000 to $8,000 synthesizer. I think it's strange that I have to go into the operating system and use a knob that is not assigned to one specific thing and doesn't just have a mixer section. If you've got mixers for the oscillators, why not have a panel towards the end that is your up to your 3 different synth voices? Seems kind of strange. So these are just a few things that I have noticed. Again, everybody's going to have different things that they've noticed. There may be an answer on that multi-drive that I'm not aware of. I'm almost positive, as I've watched a number of the videos, there's not a mixer section for the 3 different synthesizers, which is, again, bizarre. But hey, that's just my takeaway. I think that there's going to be a lot more discussion about the synthesizer. I'm probably going to be, doing a couple other videos about it. I'm going to be definitely doing a lot of other videos about other things. Finally got this guy back into the studio, so the long-awaited Prophet 5 versus Prophet 6 video is coming, and this guy's got to go back, and this guy's got to go into the shop. That's a different video also, but anyways, let me know what you guys are thinking, and again, try to put the price thing out of the discussion as much as you can. Again, $6,000 to $8,000. If you're going to talk about it, try to talk about it in context of what features maybe they're missing, or what things you think, instead of just saying that's just too much for a synthesizer, because I don't think it's too much for a synthesizer. There's different markets for different products from every company. Well, I don't want to say every company, but a lot of companies that are successful try to target different markets. And by markets, that's just fancy talk for like different income brackets. It's okay to have stuff that is the dream sense of the dream things to, to shoot for. I remember when the Andromeda A6 came out and it was $3,000 in the 90s. Again, if that were to have raised with, if you were to raise that price with inflation, we'd definitely be somewhere in the 4,000 plus market at that point. So it's not the first time, and let's not talk about the Prophet 6. What is that? That's just shy of $4,000. So yeah, I think that they could have sold it maybe at a lower price? Sure, yeah, definitely. The Model D kind of proves by Behringer versus the, Moog reissue that, yeah, they charge a premium for their product. And that's okay. It's okay. It is okay. I can't afford a Lamborghini. Do I think a Lamborghini is too expensive? They're not aiming for me. And obviously the Moog One is aiming for a different market. And I've come around on the subject. I am considering purchasing one maybe after I get a few others since paid off here. But anyways, this is a super long-winded rant. There'll be more rants to come. There'll be more structured videos to come. So like, subscribe, share, and yeah, I'll see you again soon, guys.